Namaskar, everybody, and welcome wherever you are. Nice to be interacting with you again through this virtual medium. Feel free to let me know who you are and where you are in the chat. Today we're continuing our exploration of the koshas, and we're in the Manomaya kosha, which is sometimes called the subtle mind. It's the place of the intellect, and it's the place of memory. And this is what we'll be exploring today, is memory. And actually, the inspiration for this session comes from a memory. I was stopping over in Dubai and stayed at a hotel there. Had a really nice time. I was treated so well by the hotel staff. The facilities were really good. So as I was checking out, I thanked them at the reception for how they hosted me. And they were obviously happy to hear that. And they said, you know, we're in the business of creating good memories for people. And it really struck me as significant. Obviously, the hotel wants to create good memories so that the guests go back. But actually, this is our life to a great extent, right? On a daily basis, with all of our actions and our thoughts, we are creating memories for the future. So life is about building a foundation of memories upon which we walk as human beings. So for me, it was quite an intriguing thought. I'd never reflected upon memory in that way before. So I thanked the receptionist for having enlightened me about this value of memory. So this is what we'll be exploring in the meditation a bit later on. But let's talk a little bit more about memory. It's significant, obviously, for our life, and it's reflected upon in the spiritual tradition. So in Buddhism, for example, they have the Eightfold Noble Path, and point number 7 is right memory. So to some extent, right memory in this context is remembering where we've come from. We've come from the one consciousness, remembering what is in our best interest. Our best interest is to always be reflecting upon our deeper self, developing our core soul, if you will. So there's that side of memory, which we might talk about in a future session. Today, I'd like to talk about memory in the context of building an infrastructure for our lives, like building a scaffolding for our lives. So memory can be broken up into different types of memory. There's declarative memory and non-declarative memory. So declarative memory, sorry to give all these terms, but I think it's good to break it down into how it's spoken about, at least by researchers. So there's semantic declarative memory. So these are the facts of life. Our date of birth, for example, that we remember always. We remember people's names. So these are facts that we don't have to analyze. They are simply truths about our past. And they're not so interesting for today's discussion. What's more interesting is the episodic memories. So these are memories about all the events that have taken place in the past. And these memories, to a great extent, make up our sense of identity, who we are. And then in this definitive section of the talk, there are non-declarative memories. So these are memories that are woven into our mind, so we don't really have to think about them so much. So for example, when we drive a car, we don't have to remember how to drive a car. It's just latent inside ourselves. When we turn on the computer and use different software, we've already mastered those software programs. We don't have to remember anything anymore. When it comes to riding a bike, we don't have to remember consciously how to ride a bike. It's just natural for us. So thankfully, many things in our lives we remember in this way. They're integrated into our minds, into our brains, to such an extent that we don't have to recall consciously how to do them. What's of interest today is the episodic memories. Now, we human beings are gifted because we have the ability to reflect. And so we can reflect upon these memories. We can change these memories. There is somebody who said that we don't remember what happened, but what we remember becomes what happened. We don't remember what happened, but what we remember becomes what happened. If you ask 20 people who witnessed, say, an accident, you'll have 20 different responses. So memory is not necessarily a factual account of what happened in the past. It's our interpretation of what happened in the past, and that changes. And it's okay for it to change. In fact, it could be quite constructive for memory to change over time. And there are studies on this. For example, people who fought in World War II, over time, their memories changed and they would glorify their heroic actions during the war. So this is natural. We all want to be heroes of our own lives. We all want to present ourselves to the world in a positive way. So when we are making a resume, right, which is a summation of the memory we have of what we did in the past, we may exaggerate certain aspects of that resume. When it comes to mental health, changeable memory is important. What happens in depression, for example, is that the past can get stuck, it gets fixed. There was a study on this too. They asked questions of people who had just played a video game about how many monsters they killed. So those people who were in depression were very factual. They would say 8 monsters killed if 8 were killed. But those who were not suffering from any mental health issue, they exaggerated. They said they killed more monsters than they actually did. When it comes to trauma, what happens is that the memory will be fixed and it will continually haunt the present. The memory becomes something that possesses the present to such an extent that people will feel flashbacks and the present will be completely disturbed and bewildered by these intrusions from the past that remain stuck, remain fixed. Somebody who's able to eventually overcome the trauma can reframe those memories, recategorize those memories. I was talking to a person who worked with a relief agency in South Sudan after the atrocities there. And the women had an interesting way of dealing with the traumatic memories. And these were horrible memories of all kinds of atrocities when the village was ransacked. They would reenact, using theater, the memories of the past. And in that way, they were able to cleanse their minds of the grip of the memory. They could transform the memory in some way. So this is very useful for us human beings. We have the ability to travel through time, at least mentally. Therefore, we can travel into the past and we can explore the memories of the past. And we can make sure that the memories of the past are helping us construct a positive present and a positive future. So we may go into the past and we may look at, say, the parents and understand, well, maybe the parents didn't have good parents. Therefore, they couldn't understand parenting for us. Or maybe they suffered from trauma in their own lives and weren't always present as parents. So in this way, we can look at different perspectives of the memory and we can change that memory so we can then improve the narrative of our own lives. When we look at how people respond to disasters, I mean, we're in one right now, we're in the pandemic, and how we respond to that now is going to determine the memory creation about the pandemic, how we look back on these days, like 5, 10 years into the future. So those people who are able to make something constructive out of the pandemic, and sometimes making something constructive simply means doing something. For example, I run a program here in Washington, D.C. called Food for All, and we provide food for those people affected by the pandemic. We have no problem finding volunteers because people want to feel useful in a situation like this. So those people who are volunteering, who are driving in their own cars to deliver food, are going to feel good about themselves, say 6 months from now or a year from now, when they look back, because they had agency. They could do something constructive in a situation of crisis. Memory, then, as we are discussing, is really important in creating a scaffolding upon we build our lives. Those of you who are here right now, presumably you have a memory of maybe a previous session that you enjoyed, or maybe you have a memory of a good meditation that you had before, or maybe you had a memory of perhaps being young and thinking, I want to know more about life. I want to try to find a deeper truth about life. So those memories are the scaffolding upon which one is building life as it unfolds. Hence, one will come to this session. Hence, one might read a book about spirituality. Hence, one might seek out a friend circle of people who want to explore their spirituality too. And so memory, to some extent, is the foundation. What happened in the past, or how we interpret what happened in the past, is going to build the foundation upon which we are walking in the present into the future. So this is the beauty of memory. It's something to be savored, something to be appreciated, something to be worked with in order to improve the quality of our lives. Today's meditation is going to be fairly elaborate. It's something we've explored in the past. So if you've been with me before, then it won't be too surprising. But let me explain what we're going to do in the context of memory. First of all, we're going to travel into the past. I will invite you to select a memory of the past. Maybe a memory that you would like to sweeten a little bit. Maybe an issue in the past that is still unresolved completely. But make sure you select an issue that's not too challenging. Challenging issues may need more time, may need more support from other people. So we'll go back to an issue in the past, we'll revisit and perhaps try to see different perspectives within that past event. Then we're going to go into the future. We'll select a future representation of ourselves, and we'll ask that future representation what memories he or she would appreciate. In other words, he or she, the future self, will give us a clue as to what we should be doing to build memories to support the life of ourselves in the future, which is an interesting concept. Number one, to have a dialogue with the future self, and number two, to work on building memories to support the life of the future self. Because often we think about the present self and what the present self wants right now. We don't always think about the health, the well-being, the mental calmness, if you will, of our future self. So you can decide whether it's your future self a year from now, or 2 years, or 5 years, or 10 years. And then we'll come back to the present. Now, it's good to anchor memory into some central nucleus of life. So that central nucleus of life could be one's innate spirituality, one's illuminated soul, if you will. It's from that perspective that one will look at all of the memories. If, for example, one has a positive attitude to life, if one thinks that everything happens for a reason, then obviously one will find a positive interpretation in what happened. There was a study done on people who went through 9/11 here in the United States. And those people who had a positive outlook, who, would have beliefs such as, well, one has to go through struggles in order to grow stronger. One will be tested in different ways. We can only evolve through this churning of the good with the bad. Those people obviously were able to deal with the trauma of the crisis in a much better way. For some people, this central point could be an archetype. It could be the guru. It could be, a great past sage such as Jesus or Buddha. So we anchor the memory in something profound. It could even be a belief about life. So when we come back to the present, I'll invite you to find your anchor, to embed yourself in the soul, in your illumination, in your deeper self. And that will inspire the memories of the past and the memories of the future that we are building for the future self. I hope that was helpful, in that memory is such an important aspect of who we are as human beings. Obviously, we reflect upon past memories, but we don't often think about the creation of memories in the future. And one could even explore this. So at the beginning of the day, in the morning, one could think, oh, what sort of memories would I like my future self at the end of the day to have? Or my future self at the end of the week, or at the end of the month, or at the end of the year? One can be in collaboration with one's future self to make sure that the memories created are supportive of the future self. Or one could look at one's family. What sort of memories are we going to create as a family or as a community? it's an interesting way, I think, an interesting perspective on life. And it can be enjoyable, right? It can be fun to be a memory builder. So limit experience media. I guess I'll show it. Yeah, I mean, obviously how we act is extremely important. And so we need ways to determine the best method of action. And this is one way. And I think it's really enjoyable to see time as something we can use to our advantage, not just to be restricted by what's happening in the present, but to understand the relationship between past, present, and future. And that our minds have no limit. We can travel through time for constructive purposes. Well, there we are. So thanks everybody for coming along today, and I hope this was helpful. I hope you'll be builders of constructive memories, and I wish everybody well. Until next time, namaskar.